All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our GrowFL webinar series. Today's topic is improving employee and customer experience in a hybrid work environment, presented by GrowFL corporate partner Withum. My name is Hannah Mativia, and I am the Corporate Community Engagement Manager at GrowFL. If you're not familiar with us, our mission is to provide second stage companies in the state of Florida with resources and strategies they need for next level growth. As the only statewide organization that focuses exclusively on this stage of business, we're very committed and passionate to putting the CEO and the entrepreneur at the center of everything we do. We provide support to these business owners in a few different ways. One is through leadership development and peer learning, like CEO roundtables or the webinar you're on right now. This also includes other programs that cover specific challenges or topics relevant to CEOs, like our leadership institutes or our mentor-mentee program, the American Academy of Entrepreneurs. We also offer sales, marketing, and operations support through our System for Integrated Growth program, or you might hear us refer to it as SIG. SIG is a unique opportunity for business owners because it gives them access to best practices and valuable data to help them continue to grow profitably. And then behind SIG is a team of experts that are dedicated directly to you and your company, from GIS to marketing and HR, and that they're there to give you the insight you need to overcome any issues that may be stunting your business growth. Last but not least is our annual awards program, GrowFL Florida Companies to Watch. This is a one-of-a-kind event that recognizes and celebrates the top second stage companies in the state. And since our first celebration in 2009, we have 500 companies throughout the state of Florida who have been named honorees. And I'll touch more on our GrowFL Florida Companies to Watch a little bit later. We also have communities of CEOs across the state in our regional chapters located in the Northeast, Southeast, East Central, and Tampa Bay regions of Florida. And this is a great way to get connected with the CEOs operating near you and to foster both business and personal relationships. One requirement, of course, to be a member is to be a second stage business owner or CEO. So you will be surrounded by fellow peers who can echo similar goals, who have already been through challenges you might be facing or will face down the road, and just who share a similar mindset. It's a lot of fun getting these groups together, so I encourage you to look into joining the chapter in your region. I did touch on it briefly, but we are celebrating our 11th annual GrowFL Florida Companies to Watch Awards celebration. We're excited to honor another group of second stage business owners on February 17th at the Hard Rock Live in Orlando. And with that being said, there is still time to apply. Applications are open, but will close on Friday, July 30th. So we want to recognize your innovation, your tenacity, and growth. And this is a one-of-a-kind opportunity to put your business in the spotlight. So I highly encourage you to check it out, if not to apply, but just to celebrate with us at the event in February. So that's a very brief overview of what we're doing here at GrowFL. I ran through it pretty quickly, but everything can be found on our website, and I'll also include more information in the follow-up email you'll receive after the webinar concludes. That email will also include a recording of the webinar, a copy of the slide deck, and the presenter's contact information. We do have the questions that you submitted during registration, but if you have any more throughout the presentation, please ask them in the Q&A function on your toolbar, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam, Principal of Product Management at Withum, to take it away.
Thanks, Hannah. And I really want to know the story behind that American, the shield that I saw on stage there. So, maybe Jennifer who's part of Withum also will go to that event and tell me all the backstories. So thank you all for attending. Really great group of people that I've seen in attendance. And we'll do our best to cover all of this in the 45 minutes and then the question and answer. Why me today? Talking about the hybrid work environment. I am focused solely on digital transformation, working at Withum, leading people to build intranets, communications, project collaboration over the last 14 years. I am what is called the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, meaning that I speak at events like this and also national events when they come back. I've been in Orlando several times at Microsoft Ignite and other great events, speaking and attending there. So that's who I am. And just a tiny bit from our sponsor, Withum is an advisory, tax, and auditing firm all across the United States with great offices in Florida specifically. And we are the digital transformation organization, but we have many organizations within our capabilities that can support you. What I'm focused on and what I believe in is that people, data, and content drive your business. And so much so that we focus only on one technical area, which is Microsoft 365. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Microsoft 365, well, actually we'll get into it. So just to remind you, what we're talking about today is going to be employee and customer experience, hybrid work challenges, and Microsoft 365 supporting your business, and then automation. So there you go. And Hannah had mentioned questions. So thank you so much for your questions. And because this is such a great organization, Grow FL, I have changed and updated my presentation to answer some of those questions in line, the ones that I can, and then certainly continue to ask or reach out after when you get our contact information to follow up on some of the other ones that I'm not able to get to. Most of them I'll have some answer for. All right, first, we're going to talk about experience. And this is both the employee, a team member, a lot of different staff, different organizations call them different things, and the customer or client. And I know at stage 2, you're right at the point where you have your processes, and that's what creates value. And so what we really like working with organizations like yours about is making sure you have a foundation to grow. So no pun intended. So first, I want to put you in the same headspace that I look at organizations. And so I have an example here of how construction was working during the pandemic, and maybe even before the pandemic. And so here, the first thing you'll notice is generally, we think that there are 3 different types of behaviors of employees. You have your information workers. So those are your executives, your back office, your directors. During the pandemic, they were working mostly from home, or we do know that there are a lot of finance people locked in the office because of a lot of paper going back and forth. Then you have project staff. In a construction industry, this could be an owner, this could be an architect, this could be an engineer, this could just be project managers that are a lot of tracking and information. However, they need to be in contact with the actual build and the actual frontline workers. So they're not only at home, but they're also on project site. And then frontline workers on the job site. They are the contractors, the subcontractors. They are doing the actual work, and they need to communicate all the way through the other different types. Hopefully this sounds familiar. And there was one question that was, for a hybrid work strategy, what are the best practices? What are the timing? How can you make it all work? And unfortunately, there's not one answer because of this slide, because there are different types of workers. So you have to take into consideration who is in your workplace and what their normal work patterns are before you can design best practices and communicate them that a frontline worker in this example is going to be different than the expectations on an information worker. So let's move on and talk about experience in a different way, the employee experience platform. And I actually took the Microsoft sort of definition, a system of experiences that helps an organization create a thriving culture, engaged employees, and inspiring their leaders. And here you can see that they're putting the employee at the center, and we can put our employee hat on instead of our CEO hat and say, okay, what do I want from my organization? Well, certainly I want communication. I want to be able to access resources to do my job. I want to be able to connect with my fellow team members, gain knowledge from them without having to chase them, know that I have a work-life balance, and what is the organization offering to me for that, be able to have growth and development within the organization. So I think this presents a really great image of how to interact with your employees and a lot of our expectations. Now, the wording might be a little Microsoft more than what I would use, but it's a really interesting way to think about what you're providing your employees, especially through technological systems. Now that we've talked about the employee, I want to go to a model that is talking about customers, clients, consumers, and this is from IDC. And I really like this. It actually just came out, and they're talking about the relationship between a organization and a client, and they break it into three pieces. The nature of the relationship, which is empathetic. So they're really talking about understanding the client, even through technology. Then what are the actual customer needs? What do they want? How do they want to be treated? And that's contextual for each employee. And then, of course, probably one of the reasons that I like this is technology influence. So any interaction, any communication, any engagement through technology is colored by the technologies that is being used. And we know that from working with organizations and being frustrated with wait times or what have you. So how can you make that the best interaction? And then I'm really interested in this model about the business outcomes. And I hope you all agree with this model that one of them is predictable communication. And I think that's really where technology can play a part, so that the client knows where they are in their journey of buying and being supported. The best client is a lifetime client. So providing lifetime value, a product and a service, the exchange. Money is the direct tie, but why do people stay and come back? An interesting one that IDC says is applied intelligence. So, some people don't like Big Brother, but my interpretation of this is you're using the data, the interactions that you've had with the customers to provide them with a better experience, for it to be unique and personalized and to be correct, compared to selling the same exact thing to every single client. And when you work together, this creates mutual trust, that they know, client knows that you're gathering data, but you're using it well, and you're using it on behalf of them, and so that they'll trust you more. So this is the goal of your long-term experience with your clients. And I'm sure you're doing a lot of this right now. This was just an interesting way for me to look at it and to use it as a board to jump off of, especially into warm Florida water, about how to automate those experiences. So, let's talk a little bit now about the evolution of the experience. So we're still doing this today at Withum. We're in digital transformation, and other organizations, we're helping organizations remove the paper. And I'm sure you have a report. Yes, maybe you were sending it to someone over email, but they're still filling it out and sending back. So the employee and client interaction by paper, by hand receipts. So now we've put that technology in. And then when we're talking about the hybrid workplace, we've now put in all different devices, all different locations. It doesn't matter typically as much where you're coming from. But let's be honest, the client is still filling out a PDF, then they're mailing it, then you're receiving it, then you're typing it into another system. So while that is using technology and is one step away from the paper, it's not a smooth transition. What the client is entering is not going directly into your system. So what we're talking about today is putting automation here. These little robotic arms, and making it a direct connection from the client to you, using that data in that framework the best that you can. And we'll go into detail about that. So let's talk just really quickly about some hybrid work challenges. Over the last year and a half, we've worked with organizations to overcome some of these in a pure work environment, but they're going to still continue when some people are in the office and some people are remote, and the timing, as that person had asked, is going to be not traditional. So one of them that I'm really interested in is seamless culture. How do the remote workers and the office workers feel like they're included, have the same information that every and all worker has? So this might be a change in your methodology. I highly recommend not only using email because we delete a lot of our emails, or Outlook itself might remove them. Consistent collaboration. So, there are a lot of different ways to brainstorm. There's a lot of different ways to interact. And how does that happen when you're partially remote, partially in person? And we'll talk about that. Just plain old accountability. There are a lot of organizations that are used to being able to walk up to someone's desk and say, where are we on that? How do we make that a habit and have it clear and consistent? One of the things now, hiring qualified workers. Do you want to hire qualified workers because of a lack of understanding of your forecasting in demand and in financials? Then also there's this real tide by IDC and other about nimble work structures. So using the staff that you currently have to fulfill all of the roles and not investing because you can't find the qualified workers. So you can use the technology that's already in place, an evolution from project-based work to from department-based work, breaking down silos, even in small organizations, and meeting the client where they are. They also might want to be remote compared to in face-to-face. So you have to be able to adapt those processes to give them the same valued experience wherever they are. I mentioned forecasting, cybersecurity. Certainly, as you're remote, there are opportunities for access to content. And then I would be remiss in not mentioning, and we've had webinars directly on this, there are tax regulations and ramifications. If people are working remotely and in a different state, then there are tax ramifications of that. That might not be a big deal for a growing company in Florida with a good workforce, but that is something we've seen and we're helping people with all the time. Now here, love to have you. So Hannah, I guess just write it in the chat if what people's #1 hybrid work challenges are. That would be great. Also, we can do 2 quick polls. One poll is asking if you have a hybrid work plan in place, and then also what you're currently using in Microsoft 365. Does that all work together, Hannah, or did
It does. So I did put it in the chat, the question for your biggest hybrid work challenge, and I am launching the polls now.
Great, fantastic. Ooh, and I have to answer the polls too. Okay. All right. With that said, I will move to the next slide while you're answering the poll, and start the overarching piece about what is in Microsoft 365. And I think that this is rarely seen. And my guess is that most CEOs want their technology to work and aren't involved in the actual day-to-day, hopefully not, of running the technology. But what you're purchasing when you're purchasing Microsoft 365 is not just Outlook and the applications that we're familiar with, but also it's the cloud services that are available in Office 365. Depending on the licensing, you can also be purchasing a subscription to your operating system so that it is constantly being updated. And then why I like this view too is you're also purchasing infrastructure. Within the subscription license, you have Azure as the backbone. And what that means is that you can do a lot more than just use Word, just use PowerPoint, SharePoint, Teams. And we're going to talk about those capabilities in a second. And we'll
have the results of the first poll, Adam, if that's okay.
Okay.
I'll share them with you now.
Great. Fantastic.
And then we'll launch the second question.
Great. And so, just like we had a work plan for remote work, why you would have a hybrid work plan is really for setting those expectations, that it's clear, that it's concise, that you can refer back to it. It might change. I'm sure it's an evolving document, but that typically, and we saw it over the last year and a half, gives people the comfort in what you're doing, what you're planning, and that it's not segmenting out any one group of people, that you do have a policy across everything. All right, so let's see what the responses are for the second poll.
All right, looks like a few last minute entries are trickling in. And I'll end it now and I'll share those results.
All right, great. So a lot of people using Teams. Some people, a few people not using Office 365, and a few people using a lot of different features. Oh, this is really interesting. Less people using Outlook than Teams. That's really intriguing. And people using SharePoint also. Okay, great. A varied group of people here, and hopefully we'll educate everyone. So, just as a reminder, and it seems like a vast majority are on Office 365, but, one of the values of the cloud is that you are in the cloud, and all of the tools that you have access to, on a desktop from your office are also accessible mobilely, if you allow it. And, one of the things here is it's by your user login. And so no matter what device you use with those applications, you can pull up almost all of your information that's stored within Office 365. So I want to quickly go through how Microsoft 365 supports your business, how we look at it. And first, one of the questions was, how do you keep your company safe in a remote environment? We've seen a high increase in phishing scams. So education around emails while people are home, they're more likely to click on that phishing scam. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication. The weakest link to any organization is your passwords. Then also, what software does your employee needs? There are virtualization capabilities where even if something has to be on premises, you can gain access to it not only through VPN, or you can even move it to a virtual desktop on the cloud, so that you don't have anything barring you from accessing your systems. And again, it's secured by your username and password. Another question was safeguarding endpoint access to resources. And so MFA, it's probably a more complicated question, but multi-factor authentication is always a great tool. And then in Microsoft 365, you have something called conditional access policies. So a complicated example of that is a hospital. Hospitals have laptops and iPads or tablets. And if a doctor walks out of the hospital, with a tablet with patient information on it, typically a few hundred yards or a half mile away, that tablet does not have any access to that data anymore, even if it has access to the network. So that's what a conditional access policy can do. So security is built in to Microsoft 365. Then it sounded from the responses that we're all familiar with, communicating, email, chatting has been one of the biggest Teams things. Large scale meetings, actually, Teams was going to support webinars coming up soon. So maybe a next GrowFL webinar will be in a Teams meeting, who knows? For you CEOs out there, intranet and news, a great central location to put all of your updates. And what's great about it is you're bringing people in and you're ensuring that staff are getting the updates that you want them to, not selecting an email, just the ones they feel like reading. Then, of course, collaboration. This is a huge section we could spend all of our time on. One of the writing questions was, how do we use Teams to have a creative and in the same rooms type feel? And one of the things is the hardware you use in your conference rooms. Teams can make it seamless. Zoom that we're on right now can do some of this too. Also, there's a whiteboard app that's fantastic that records same old whiteboarding that we used to do, cameras on. And it's about copying the method. And another question was about how do you make someone feel comfortable who isn't used to being remote? Is that you have to work at it that a interactive session like today, well, not as interactive, although you will be let off the line. An interactive session is the same, and you have to treat eye contact and communication the same way when you're online as if you're in person. That organization also might be interested that most CAD software, CAD files can be saved in OneDrive. I'm not going to say all, but most CAD software can be. And then last piece that people overlook sometimes, when you're in the cloud, you can co-author. So, you can be building a PowerPoint, you can be writing an Excel document, and you can all jump in and write and edit, not the same section, but different sections at the same time. So that really helps with getting that creative in the same room, I love that phrase, experience. There are certainly many more answers to that question. Another question, which was great, is what IT tools do you recommend? I'm going to jokingly say as few as possible. And there are certainly best-in-class solutions that are outside of the Microsoft realm, like a computer-aided design CAD solution. But if you can try to reduce what your employees are using, they will be more efficient. And to that point, Microsoft in February released a solution called Viva, and it is built all in Microsoft Teams. And the reason for that is to remove the switching that people have to do on a daily basis. Microsoft recognizes that their tools are not necessarily the best in all cases, but as you probably know, you can embed another tool inside the Teams experience in a tab or even on the left-hand side. So, it's a broad question, but I would say take a first stab at using all of Microsoft 365. You've paid for it. And when that doesn't support you, pardon me, that you can then look for a best in breed solution. In addition to best practices, making sure you calendar everything. When you're going to actually go to lunch, when you're going to take a break because you don't want to be in back-to-back meetings, which has been a horrible practice in this remote first world. Also, as a CEO, a manager, a leader, highly recommend water cooler style check-ins, one-on-one. There has been a huge burnout of multi-person meetings and people not wanting to express themselves in a group. So it's really important to have that one-on-one time that's similar to the water cooler that we joke about in an office. Also, to give you a little more in-depth best practice, we've worked with a lot of our clients in automating, focusing, digitizing their hiring and training. And so the IT tools, going back to that question, that are at your fingertips are being able to have forms when they're starting the process or outside of the organization or inside the organization. being able to have your clear documents and procedures, not having to mail something, not having to rewrite it or send emails over and over. Having workflows that if a person does this, then they can, then they receive this information. As we're doing right now, you can do live training. What's even better in Teams is that you can record that training, you can have a transcript of that training, and you can even embed quizzes into that training. So people who can attend it live, you can make sure that they've paid attention to that session and quiz them on what they've been reading. So you have that all. So, you know, as a hiring manager of a growing organization, you can really multiply your capabilities by having this all digitally available. Then we're going to talk much more about this. You know, we're going to talk about automating. You know, one of the questions was favorite financial and automation tools. And in the context of this meeting, we're really talking about Microsoft. So I'm going to say Dynamics. But we work with a lot of solutions, NetSuite, Square, and there are a lot of add-ons that we've facilitated with organizations as they grow to be able to you know, optimize exactly what they're focused on. So I can't really give you you know, one prescriptive answer. And again, for automation tools, we're going to talk about Power Apps and Power Automate, which again are built into the Microsoft 365 environment. Then finally, extending. So I had mentioned before, actually it's not final, next to final, but you have all of these built-in capabilities, but then on top of that, you can use that data and you can expand it. There are also huge amount of first-party and third-party apps. And for this group, one that I really like is Ships. And so we've worked with a lot of our clients to help them do their no-touch scheduling. This is an app that's designed for frontline workers that allows you to do shifts. So Microsoft went out and did this. Is it a full-time management system? Not really, but as a growing organization, it's free. It lets you do a lot of communication. And the interesting thing is it's much better on the phone than it is on the desktop. So it's really targeted for your you know, on-site or frontline workers. That's just one example of, I think it's now up to 350 approved apps that are in your app store. And then also something that Microsoft does really well is that it measures. And so it has a lot of built-in scores. One that's really interesting is productivity score. Now, you know, it's not perfect because it's looking at your usage of Teams, your usage of Outlook, your usage of Microsoft solutions. But over time, you can compare it and do your own analysis of how your workers are working and being productive in the cloud. Now, you're also might be thinking, whoa, that's major big brother. Compared to other clouds, Microsoft is not sharing this data with anyone else but yourself and is not using it for marketing purposes. So all of this data is being gathered to assist you as an organization to be more efficient. And certainly there are dashboards on administration, technology, security, and you can create your own using the tool Power BI, which I think is fantastic. Move from Excel spreadsheets to live data interactions. And that way you can get more answers more quickly, reduce, you know, it takes some upfront time to understand the data you want to gather. But then as a CEO, you're not asking other staff members to gather data very quickly and divert from their focus. It's all in the chart and you can select the relations between them. Whew, did that really quick. Hope that was valuable of what's in Microsoft 365. For those who are already using it, please love to hear your feedback. And then also the people who said that they are not in Office 365, I'd like to be interested to hear in chat if that intrigued them or didn't impress them. And either is great. Now, getting on to the real fun part about this, we're talking about automation. And I thought that this was really interesting, again, from IDC. They've done a survey in 2020 that technology is the foundation of the process. It is not the full process. You still have your intellectual property, you still have your competitive advantages, but what's different is that you're just making time available for your staff to do more of that work compared to the base level of your processes. So that's what we're going to talk about. Going over it quickly, in Microsoft 365, there's typically not one answer, and definitely not one and only right answer. There are several different ways to build forms and automate solutions. The first way is a solution called lists. And I think of these as built up Excel spreadsheets. The one thing they don't do versus Excel is calculations. But if you're tracking tasks, if you're looking for approvals, new clients, new projects, this is a great tool to use. It's focused mainly internally. You can customize it a little bit, and it can be displayed and worked on in many different places. Then there's Microsoft Forms, which can be used internally or externally. It is a survey, quizzes, polls, very simple. You can't customize it that much, but really easy to use. Then you have Power Apps. Power Apps can be very simple to use or very complex. There are two different flavors. Canvas, which is sort of a traditional form builder. You can make any type of form, very easy to make mobile forms also. So if you have staff that are going on site or working with clients, you can build a form that they can just go on their phone and fill it out and not have to take that piece of paper out. Then model driven is really interesting. It's the basis for customer relations systems that we'll talk about in a little while. You design your data structure and Microsoft will automatically create the forms that follow that data structure. So for your specific process and procedure, you define what the data is and the interface will come up, and actually even some charts and some dashboards. And then of course, you can always hire people like ourselves at Withum or to do custom development, to access the data in different ways to make different forms and solve different automation solutions. So let me go into a little more detail about these and show you some examples. And I apologize, I'm not going to do that much live because 45 minutes just isn't enough time. But reach out if there's one area that you're really interested in. So if you hadn't seen a Microsoft list, this is an example of asset management. And a list can be added in SharePoint, in Teams. It's made to be a really simple interface. Once created, you can track items or a project. It can be used independently for yourself. And again, it's through your login. You can access it through SharePoint, through OneDrive. And here, you can see color coding. You can do different views. And the form, for those people who've been using SharePoint for a while, the forms have truly changed. And with a tiny bit of code language called JSON, you can change the forms and make them very nice to use compared to the long list that they used to be. No pun intended there. So that's available for you personally, for your organization, for collaboration. Compared to Excel, you can share different views, different statuses, so you can see the progress of a different item. With that said, too, there's a tool called Planner, which is a specific app in Teams and SharePoint that is for task management, but this was an asset management example. Then Microsoft Forms, is available externally. We've seen a lot of organizations use it for COVID-19 screening form. When you're coming into the office, pull up your phone, click on the app, the link, and fill out how you're feeling really quickly. And that records it. This can also be for visitors to your organization. You just send them the link really quickly and they can fill it out. So really simple example of being able to create a very important form, but not having to do anything but just type in the questions and have it build itself. Then we talked about Power Apps. And so this is a case study with Microsoft of Belron. And they are, their company is Autoglass. And so this is for fleet checks. So this was a quick app that as a person's walking through the cars, they are able to perform the checks instead of writing it down. So, the quote, it used to take 20 minutes. So now it only takes 5. So that 15-minute difference is huge and actually allows people in this quote to make the repair. So just by taking an existing paper form and putting it on a mobile device and that data going into directly into the service system, they were able to save a lot of time and allow their different fleet to run better because they could see through their windows. Now, we talked about a lot of different forms, so I wanted to talk about form data for a second. So all of this data is being gathered. So you can just leave it. You can also move it into Excel and manipulate it, or you could put it into Power BI that we talked about before, where you could really analyze it. So that's another advantage here too, that you're using one of these solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem, and then you can, in the Microsoft ecosystem, analyze that data in multiple ways. It goes back to security. If you're keeping it in the family of solutions, you're securing it all the same way. So you can focus on securing Microsoft 365, and you don't have to worry about securing other apps and other access points. Or you can make workflows and send information or send notifications to people based on different results of those answers. Now, with that said, I wanted to show you one last thing about automating billing. And so this is an automation where this organization that we first built this for, and we've used it for different firms, is a construction group. And so before, they were receiving emails, and then they were sending emails, and they were creating an Excel spreadsheet, and it's very disorganized to get it started. Then they had their bidding process down, but they couldn't come back and track what had happened with all of their bids. So simply put, we created a Microsoft team for bidding. And in that, they had different channels, and the channels, as you know, are for conversations, for files. And then there was a list that you're seeing on the screen right now. And that list had a custom form, which was capturing when bids came in. And so the bid tracker would allow the bidding team to say bid or no bid. And then if there was a bid, there was a workflow that would create the corresponding documents to that bid. And then because this was actually a prime contractor, they could share those documents with organizations that they needed to fill out to complete the full bid. Also, something we did with them is we created calendar events to be able to know when the deadlines were, and then planner tasks to track every single detail of what has to go on to a bid. So they were working on it internally, they were working on it externally, all from one location. And then what we did was, if in that bid tracker, the bid went to a win, we would actually create a brand new team that was for the project. And so some of you had answered that you did use Teams for project management, and that's great. And that's one of the things that it's good for. So they transmitted automatically from a bid to a team. And that's where the project team would work. And they would always have access to that original bid information. And that was one of the other problems they were having, is the project group wasn't 100% sure about what was promised during the bidding. So now there was seamless data, and they could always see what was available when. Whew, all right. So, those are a lot of the ability to automate. And so as we talked about in the experience, moving from a piece of paper to a digital process, and now with all of these tools, you're allowing the client to interact directly with the employee. So you're giving them that experience, hopefully, that they expect. Direct information, and all of that data as it's being gathered can be used in multiple different ways. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A piece. I see one right now that we'll look at in a few minutes. But I wanted to finish off with customer relations. And so there are ways of actually just using Microsoft 365 itself for customer relations, but there are, as you all know, customer relationship management systems. And what are these systems supposed to do? Well, they're answering questions and providing knowledge. And as we know, we do it ourselves. This frees up employees, that if we can provide the right information to our clients, they can self-serve themselves. You also could submit tickets. Sometimes it's called cases. You could schedule service. Including an employee, you can have a remote conversation. Also, again, if you're sending people to a CRM system, you can use that information for marketing. You can understand what they're looking for. You can understand their behaviors. And that's where we talked about in the framework, you can provide them a more unique and personalized experience. You also, by seeing what they're looking for, by seeing how much time they spend, you can gauge their client satisfaction. And yes, I put the dots here on purpose, and more and more and more. So with this, I actually will move to the actual website. And so here, I don't know who loves coffee, but I love coffee. So this is a live. Actually, I could even, I'll cheat. You can't log in, but I will put this in the chat. If you're curious. I haven't gone through the entire site, but we can search the knowledge base, as a lot of us would do. We'll just go straight in for the Googling, Binging, and we'll see the information here. Now, this is a fake company. This is an example. And I'm just going to briefly go over it, but this is a Power Apps portal. You can build a custom website, and it has all of these different pieces built into it. So I just did a search. There's also training that you can have for the different coffee makers. Then, waiting for my system, of course, creating the ticket, following up on rewards, returns or exchanges. You could also think of as service. And then they have, different specific follow-ons. So you can see this is a pretty nice, straightforward website that allows you to interact with your customers, and all of the data is coming back into your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And certainly there are other solutions here too. Now, what I really like, and I'll go back to the presentation, what I really like it as a demonstration of the data is once you're gathering data, you can be like a much bigger organization, and you can have a digital virtual assistant. So on that web page, there was a Let's Chat button. And at first, you can say, you can come in here and the virtual assistant will talk to you, and it will ask you what exactly you'd want. And in this case, the person typed other. And then the question was, the coffee was really cold. And so now the automated system asks for a PIN for the person to log in and actually give permission. And the system can access what that person has purchased and give them the feeling that the system, virtual agent, knows exactly where they are and what they're dealing with. And then in this case, the automated system could actually log in to the Smart Brew 300 and could change the default temperature to the appropriate 200 degrees. And just in case you were wondering, that is the appropriate temperature for 195 to 200, good coffee. So here, no employee has had to interact, and the client is satisfied because action was actually taken. Now, this is an extreme solution where you have technology behind it, a coffee maker that is connected to the internet and can be adjusted. But you can imagine that for services and for other questions, you can answer a lot of questions with this virtual assistant, always giving the ability to go to a live agent. And, you know, while some of us still like picking up a call, I think there is a move, because so many organizations do use these virtual assistants, that it's okay to drive people through this situation first, but you need that data. You need that unique experience for that client to be able to feel like it's not just a robot, but it's a knowledgeable robot that is giving them information. And so, you know, when we talk about the digital experience, we're talking about connecting data directly from the client into your backend systems, freeing up the time that your team members have to be able to focus on the client experience, to update the data, processes, procedures, and not have to be running around and solving specific cases every single time. With that said, I think I did go through most of the questions that we had before. If you have any more, please let me know.
So we do have one that was submitted right now. There's some more background in the chat area, so I'll read that one because it might be relatable to other people on the webinar today. But somebody asked, there is a tool we use that allows us to store history, notes, files, etc. in a database backed up on our network drive. However, it's not friendly with other tools like Teams. We use 2 different CRM-like softwares, but neither do everything that we need. Where is a good place to start to find a CRM that manages our productivity as well as backs up our communication?
Really, really great question. I mean, I think there are some variations depending on your exact organizational structure. So I don't want to jump, but I do believe that, you know, if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, Dynamics does directly speak to Teams. Also, you heard me mention Power App Portal. So what that means is it's actually not dependent on Dynamics anymore. So you're able to really, for a low code, there is custom development that is involved. You're able to use SharePoint. You can use Dynamics, which has a lot of great things built in, or you can use some templates that Microsoft gives you, alter them a little bit, and you can still have this website experience. You've customized to the way your business works, and you've directly connected it into your productivity. So number one, I would certainly look at cloud solutions that are much more integrated. So I'm curious about your specific, almost reminds me of a legal firm, history, notes, files. So there are different solutions, and I think in general, cloud ones will play nicer with each other. They also can sit behind one login. So if you aren't using Microsoft 365, another reason for Microsoft 365 is that it does something called single sign-on to a vast amount of apps. So your end users can use one solution for that. great question. I apologize that I didn't give you one answer, and certainly happy to go into a little deeper about your specific needs. But you know, CRM, dynamic CRM definitely has a lot of the different pieces. So you get different features, even the financials, through one interface, even though they're focused on different part of your business. Yeah, Goldmine. Oh, I've used to use Goldmine. Okay, so that's, yeah, pure customer relationship management, right? So you would want to go up a level. Goldmine is great, but that's specifically for your interaction with the clients, where it doesn't have any additional add-ons. Thanks for that detail. Okay, so in the Q&A, I see, oh, there's an answered one. Oh, it was the same question, great. There are a large number of apps available in the 365 platform, many from third-party developers. What is Microsoft's policy and procedure for vetting the apps and the developers? A really great question. So there is a practice, and it goes through a quality review through Microsoft, security testing. They ensure that they're following best practices and that the security model is not leaking information anywhere. I think that's probably, I know it's one of my concerns. So a great question. So there, I would have to find out where that's published, but it certainly is published. I know that we are in the process of doing it. So we have to submit the app, we have to give the code, Microsoft reviews the code, talks to us, and that's why, you know, while there are 300 plus, while there are only 300 plus, because they need to go through a specific process with Microsoft to make it secure. Great, and really interesting question. I think we only have 2 minutes left here. I hope everyone has gotten value out of today's. If there are any final questions, please type them into Q&A or chat, or have a great rest of your day.
All right, so we are reaching the top of the hour and we want to be mindful of everybody's time. So thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Of course, thank you to Adam and our corporate partner Withum for presenting today's webinar. You will receive a follow-up email from me later this afternoon that includes a copy of Adam's slide deck, a copy of the recording of the webinar, and Adam's information if you have any follow-up questions. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I see you on our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.